Some crimes are so brutal, so shocking, that even teenagers can be labeled as evil. These young killers were sentenced as adults and now face the harsh realities of prison life. Today, we'll see what happens to evil and murderous kids behind bars. Let's dive in. Michael Carneal. Let's dig into the haunting account of Michael Carneal, the Heath High School shooter, who is now serving a life sentence. On December 5, 1997, the usual buzz filled the halls of Heath High School in West Paducah, Kentucky, as students chatted and prepared for the day ahead. Unbeknownst to them, their lives were on the brink of irreversible change due to the actions of one student. Michael Carneal, then a 14-year-old freshman, arrived at school with a dark plan hidden in his backpack. His classmates and teachers had no idea that he was carrying a loaded Ruger Mk2.22 caliber pistol, along with earplugs to block out the noise that would soon follow. As the morning unfolded, Carneal joined a prayer group in the school's lobby, a peaceful moment before classes began. But within seconds, the calm was violently disrupted by Carneal's twisted intentions. Without warning, Carneal drew his stolen pistol and began firing at the students around him. Chaos erupted as panic spread, with students desperately seeking shelter from the barrage of bullets. Tragically, 3 young lives were lost. Nicole Hadley, a 14-year-old with a passion for music, Jessica James, a 17-year-old member of the marching band, and Casey Steger, a 15-year-old aspiring police officer. The violence didn't end there. 5 other students were seriously injured, both physically and emotionally. These survivors included Shelley Shaberg, a 17-year-old athlete and homecoming queen, Melissa "Missy" Jenkins, a 15-year-old who was paralyzed from the chest down, Kelly Hard Alsip, a 16-year-old softball player, Holland Holm, a 14-year-old academic standout, and Craig Keene, a 15-year-old active in school activities. The reasons behind Carneal's actions remain debated, with some pointing to bullying and his mental health struggles, including paranoid schizophrenia. Carneal himself confessed to feeling isolated and unloved, leading to his horrific act. After the shooting, Carneal was swiftly arrested and held accountable for his crimes. He pled guilty to charges of murder, attempted murder, and theft of the firearm. Given his young age, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The Heath High School shooting was a precursor to later tragedies, like the Columbine High School massacre, and sparked nationwide discussions on the need for stricter gun control and better mental health support for at-risk youth. Carneal's 1998 guilty plea, influenced by his mental illness, resulted in a life sentence with parole possible after 25 years. Despite appeals in 2007 and 2012, arguing his mental state invalidated the plea, his sentence remained unchanged. In 2022, the parole board denied his release, effectively making his sentence life without parole, citing the severity of his crimes and concerns about his ongoing treatment. Michael Carneal's life in prison is a stark contrast to his former freedom. Confined at the Kentucky State Reformatory in LaGrange, his days are governed by routine, isolation, and the constant burden of his past actions. In prison, Carneal's day begins early, as the sounds of clanging bars and footsteps fill the air. The monotony of prison life is palpable as he follows the rigid schedule of meals, recreation, and work assignments. Isolation is a constant companion, with Carneal spending most of his time in his cell. This small space, though a sanctuary of sorts, also serves as a constant reminder of his confinement and the lives he irrevocably altered. Interactions with other inmates are limited and closely monitored. Prison life, though structured, is filled with reminders of his past. Every day, Carneal is confronted with the reality of his actions, especially when encountering inmates affected by his crimes. Sean Sellers. At just 16, Sean Sellers committed a series of murders so shocking that they not only devastated a community, but also ignited nationwide debates over the death penalty, juvenile justice, and the influence of mental illness on criminal behavior. In 1986, under the grip of drugs and driven by deep-seated anger and twisted beliefs, Sellers murdered 3 people, including his own parents and a convenience store clerk in Oklahoma City. His crimes were brutal and calculated, leaving a trail of horror and sparking intense media scrutiny. Sellers wasn't just another troubled teen. He was deeply involved in the occult, dabbling in satanic rituals that further darkened his already turbulent mind. Drawn to the power and dominance that these rituals promised, Sellers descended into a world where the lines between right and wrong became increasingly blurred. His obsession with the occult fueled his growing rage and detachment from reality, pushing him toward the unimaginable acts he would soon commit. The night of the murders, Sellers was high on drugs, which he claimed helped him carry out his violent impulses. He first killed Robert Bauer, a convenience store clerk, in a cold-blooded robbery. Then, just months later, he turned his rage inward, murdering his mother, Vonda, and his stepfather, Paul. In a chilling confession, Sellers later admitted that he shot his parents while they slept, citing his involvement with Satanism and claiming that a demonic presence had urged him to kill. Sellers' case became a lightning rod for debates about the appropriate punishment for juveniles who commit such heinous crimes. His young age and diagnosis of multiple personality disorder complicated matters even further. Sellers argued that one of his alternate personalities, a demonic figure he referred to as Ezereth, was in control during the murders, leading some to question his criminal responsibility. However, the court found the testimony regarding his mental illness unreliable, concluding that Sellers was fully aware of his actions. Despite the pleas for clemency from various human rights organizations and mental health advocates, who argued that his youth and mental state should spare him from the death penalty, Sellers was sentenced to die. His case drew international attention, with many questioning the morality of executing someone who had committed their crimes as a minor, especially under such disturbing circumstances. On February 4, 1999, after years on death row and numerous appeals, Sean Sellers was executed by lethal injection. His final words expressed remorse for his actions and a hope for forgiveness, but the debate surrounding his case continued. To this day, the story of Sean Sellers serves as a chilling reminder of how a troubled mind, fueled by drugs and dark influences, can spiral into unspeakable violence. His life and death raise profound questions about justice, the death penalty, and the treatment of juvenile offenders in the criminal justice system. Nikolas Cruz. Nikolas Cruz, the Parkland shooter who brutally ended 17 lives at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018, now spends his days in a maximum security prison, far from the chaos he unleashed. On that tragic February day, Cruz armed himself with an AR-15 and unleashed a terrifying assault on his former classmates and teachers, leaving a trail of devastation that shook the nation. His heinous act reignited fierce debates over gun control and mental health, as the country grappled with the horror of yet another mass shooting. Now isolated and infamous, Cruz is locked away in a small, barren cell for 23 hours a day, where the walls serve as a constant reminder of his monstrous actions. His notoriety makes him a target, and strict protocols keep him at arm's length from other inmates. But even in such isolation, Cruz has not been immune to conflict. In his early days behind bars, tensions quickly escalated, culminating in a brutal and violent altercation with a prison officer. Cruz's life behind bars is a far cry from freedom. His attempts to reach out to admirers, yes, he has them, are quickly shut down by prison authorities. His mental state, already fragile, has deteriorated further under the crushing weight of isolation. Prison psychologists keep a close watch as he swings between paranoia, defiance, and despair. But the idea of rehabilitation? Forget it. Cruz is trapped in a nightmare of his own making, serving as a grim reminder of a tragedy that forever changed a community. As the years drag on, Cruz's existence will remain bleak and solitary, a fitting end for someone whose name will always be synonymous with one of America's deadliest school shootings. T.J. Lane. T.J. Lane, notorious for his chilling school shooting, has had a deeply troubled and defiant journey through the prison system. From the beginning, Lane resisted adapting to the strict confines of Allen Correctional Institution, where he accumulated 7 violations. His infractions ranged from marijuana use to self-mutilation, where he carved makeshift tattoos into his chest. These acts were clear signs of Lane's inner turmoil and his ongoing struggle with the mental health issues that contributed to his crimes. Lane's behavior wasn't just limited to self-harm. He also showed consistent defiance toward prison authorities, frequently refusing to follow orders and challenging the rules. His inability to adapt extended to the prison's educational programs, where he repeatedly refused to complete assignments, citing physical illness and migraines as excuses. Even when allowed to draw in class as a concession, Lane misused the opportunity by creating disturbing images, including labeling himself as a killer. This continued fascination with violence demonstrated his lack of remorse and deep-seated issues. A turning point in Lane's incarceration came when he attempted a bold escape. Along with 2 other inmates, Lane scaled a prison fence under the cover of night, briefly tasting freedom before being swiftly recaptured. This failed escape highlighted significant security lapses and led to Lane's transfer to Ohio's Supermax prison in Youngstown, known for housing the state's most dangerous criminals. Before his transfer, officers discovered contraband in Lane's cell, including unauthorized clothing, books, and even Pokémon cards, which pointed to his continued ability to flout prison rules. Once in the Supermax facility, Lane's life changed dramatically. He was confined to a small cell, spending 23 hours a day in extreme isolation with minimal human contact. The harsh conditions, a barren cell, strict routines, and constant surveillance served as a constant reminder of his crimes and the severe punishment he was serving. The Supermax environment was designed to control the most dangerous inmates, but it also exacerbated Lane's fragile mental state. The isolation, lack of meaningful activity, and relentless solitude took a heavy toll on him, pushing him further into despair and highlighting the severe challenges of rehabilitation in such extreme conditions. Lane's story not only reflects the brutal realities of life in a Supermax prison, but also raises serious questions about the effectiveness of current prison systems in dealing with inmates with profound psychological issues. Zachary Davis. Zachary Davis's story is one of the most chilling and haunting. In August 2012, at just 15, he brutally murdered his mother with a sledgehammer and tried to set his brother's room on fire. His crime shocked everyone, leaving a trail of devastation. Sentenced to at least 60 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 71 years, Zachary's future looks bleak. In prison, Zachary entered a grim reality, isolated, burdened by his actions and grappling with the weight of his sentence. The loss of his father to ALS in 2007 had already unraveled his mental health, pushing him into a dark obsession with violence and serial killers. His notebooks, filled with disturbing quotes like, "You can't spell slaughter without laughter," were a terrifying glimpse into his troubled mind. During his trial, Zachary showed a chilling lack of emotion, leaving the courtroom and the judge horrified. His grandmother, Gail, pleaded for understanding, arguing that his actions were the result of untreated mental illness. Despite her heartfelt appeal, Zachary was labeled evil and sentenced to what might be a life behind bars. Now, rotting in prison, Zachary's life is a monotonous routine. He reflects on what could have been, but the possibility of redemption seems distant.